Good evening. This is edition 2 on Slife the Knife. And this is it's coming up on Memorial Day weekend. I think that's very fitting because we can memorialize back when Jim still had some integrity when he was a younger officer. See, I served as a captain alongside this fool. And I'm just really sick of him because you see right there, that's where the buck stops in ASOC. Those 3 stars. And when you're in command, as we've been told, and I was told just like Jim, you're responsible for everything that happens and fails to happen under your command. And what's failed to happen under his command is honest standards. We never had a problem with that in ASOC. It never was a problem when Jim was growing up into it. But the political atmosphere in the military has allowed him to grandstand on some issues, but you should have grandstanded on the damn truth, Jim. Because you sit there, I don't care if you answer anybody. All your peers are seeing this, and I'm going to show them why that you, the 3-star general, were absolutely involved in this issue and why it does go straight to you. The reason it goes straight to you is not for the times that you relieve people without having the guts to call them in and hand them their OPR. They had to get it in a Holy Joe and find out from somebody. And these are people you served beside, Jim. So if they were so egregious that they should be relieved, shouldn't you have had the guts to tell them? But that's just something in the past in my crawl. This issue is about what's happening under your command right now, Jim. And this started back in 13. So let me tell you something. Basically, I told you in the first story, and I'm going to show you why it's connected to Slife. And that's why either he's in on it or he was lied to. And if you were lied to, Jim, I apologize. I apologize. You didn't know any of this was going on, and I'm sure you're going to make it right. Isn't that right? Isn't that what you wrote me one time? You know how I am. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Well, the bottom of it's right here. It's your Senate confirmation. The question is, do you lie during investigations or do you tell the truth? So let's start out where I'm at, Chief. This is why Morrison and all those people are not running OSR, and your airmen aren't getting the best training support they could. They did for 17 years, but politics has defeated it. So here's how it goes, Jim. You took command of ASOC about 3 years ago, right? When you were taking command of ASOC, a trial went underway where an officer lied. That officer was Jimmy Mott. He lied. His testimony did not match his sworn deposition. And when that issue was brought to Colonel Conley had an issue because Colonel Conley's legal advisor was a guy named Kindness, Lieutenant Colonel Kindness, and Kindness had a previous relationship with Colonel Mott from another command, and they were known buddies. So Colonel Conley, who's now in the Space Force, General Conley, I went to him and said, hey, look what's going on to these guys, and he went to you with it. Now, I'm retired, but you didn't do nothing with it, Jim. You let that officer retire. And it's all because some lawyers, starting with Kindness, couldn't tell the truth, and some other people. So this colonel committed perjury, and you had a choice to keep him on active duty, or you didn't even need a process. You're the commander. You could call him in with the document you have and say, what say you? Did you punish somebody for something they didn't do by making up something else? Just because you were mad? That's what it said. Well, Jim, you should handle that, but go on. So you had the testimony that this civilian, Mr. Lutz, who had been a colonel, was involved in it too. Guess who used to work for Lutz right under his tutelage? Lieutenant Colonel Freel, one of your execs, Jim. I'll tell you how you got the execs. But nobody wanted to listen to anybody's testimony but these people. But you had Colonel Koskinas, Colonel Kokinas, Colonel Anderson, Colonel Thomas, all people that were group qualified commanders or selected for that, or successful squadron commanders with you, but you didn't want to read their statements. And so here's what goes down. Lieutenant Colonel Freel takes command. And I'm going to talk to you about something. Colonel Mott's claim to fame that you let out, Jim, was when he was in War College, he wrote a paper on toxic leadership. Everybody's heard about it. I think I'm staring at it and what I'm looking at right behind me. But there's also something I believe that we're missing. It's called toxic followership. And you know what that is? That's where there's a toxic leader and everybody knows it. And when that toxic leader gets in charge, he needs people to support him. And the toxic followers who have been out there who couldn't get promoted on their own work, they join in with them and then we just destroy a unit. And in this case, Col Freel was the DO of a unit, the first sauce. You know that unit, right, Jim? Because you commanded the wing over it. Used to come down to the shop a lot, right? When I was on active duty, you know it well. Okay, there was nothing wrong with it. So here's what happened. You know Colonel Jenkins, you know him, don't you, Jim? Yeah, you helped promote him. You know him. Al Jenkins, stand-up dude. He knew there was nothing wrong. So some incidents happened where Morrison and some of these people reported to have done some wrong things, but not under Freel's command, actually under Jenkins. But Jenkins had already handled these issues. So they waited till the week of the change of command, and I was gone, retired, Jim. And they brought up all these issues to be investigated. Freel was already the DO of the unit and knew Jenkins had handled it, but they threw in a new issue, an issue that would go, it proved to be untrue. And he had the right to conduct a command-directed investigation, but how could he say he knew nothing, Jim? He was the director of operations of the same unit. And he didn't go to clear it up with a guy he'd just taken command from who could have cleared it up. He launched a command-directed investigation and added all these things that came out of it. They were all things that were under other people's command. But those other people weren't really questioned about it because Colonel McClure and Colonel Jenkins could have answered those questions. And it wasn't the command-directed investigation that being unfounded, Jim. Col Freel then conducted another command-directed investigation over whether a ship had been authorized as a pack. You know, the ship the one that we're going to land decks on, AFSOC spent about $1 million, and the whole Air Force could have landed any rotary wing they owned on it. But they sank it after we spent the money on it because somebody said we didn't need it. And they said it was the commander, which was you, Jim. And Freel told Mr. Morrison that he wanted a report on this. Well, Mr. Morrison had been a subordinate employee and wouldn't have received direction. And if it was so critical that he needed Morrison to do this investigation on this ship and other things, why was he conducting a command-directed investigation on Morrison? If he trusted Morrison to investigate this other issue, why wasn't that included in the CID? You know why, Jim? Because Freel was going to sit on the selection board for Morrison and Fisher and be involved in all that. And he wanted to make sure that the culture change that he had wanted as a DO and that wouldn't have been supported by Jenkins and wasn't needed, that was his vehicle. And then he boarded people. And you know who works for Morrison now? In charge of Morrison now, Jim? A guy who never had an additional duty in that flight, who was below. So a GS-11 went straight to the GS-13 position. But if you pull out that PD, Jim, you're supposed to have all these aircrew quals. He has none of them. He was just a toxic follower. And then he hired his former business employer or former business partner to replace another section commander. And none of the people that sat on that board for Maritime were even Maritime qualified, including Mr. Cathell. He had not attained that qualification. So the guys that had all the qualification and had run that unit flawlessly, 20-some thousand missions without a Class A accident, are now not in charge of it, Jim, because of politics and because people lied during an investigation. And there's been accidents and people have ordered boats that don't have trailers and done split disbursements. And no matter what's reported, it's not investigated. Your system is broken, Jim. It's yours. Remember, you're the AFSOC commander. And I've got these documents. They were sent to you. Listen, we sent FOIA requests, Mr. Fisher and them did. And they said they didn't find them. Why'd they do manual searches when they asked for a digital search of the records? You know how I know those emails were there, Jim? Because I wrote them on active duty to Conley and to see you and pass that information to you. And then I was gone when I retired. So Jim, ask yourself, why do these 40-year civilians suffering at the fate of toxic leadership? And you're telling me the guy from Maritime who'd run it flawlessly for years, scoring a perfect 5 on every evaluation by multiple commanders, that he needed a culture change. And so Col Freel promoted a guy that had 2 DWIs and no AFSOC quals whatsoever. He was also junior to the shop, not scoring 5 on his appraisals, and had to leave because of his drinking. Take a leave of absence from work before. That's hiring the best employees. And best of all, Jim, when it was all over and Col Freel had taken his toxic leadership and recruited toxic followership, let me tell you something. The guy that got hired said we had an awful flight. That Morrison and all this stuff down there was wrong. Mr. Cathell said that, but he never said that for the years he was there before as a regular employee. He said it after he got the job promotion, quid pro quo. And after it was all over and Morrison wasn't the flight commander and Mr. Morey, who'd run assault zone, was also far more qualified. So you had 3 guys in the flight. You know what else is suspicious, Jim? It was an internal hire, but nobody knew about it at first except the guy who got hired. And when he mentioned it was advertised, Col Freel did not even tell the flight where the supervisor was going to be hired that it was going to be advertised. Does that pass the smell test, Jim? I think not. You got some problems. You're controlling the whole thing and it ain't fair. And we can't do nothing about it except use our constitutional rights of free speech to tell you that you either need to deal with this or you sure don't be, in my opinion, don't be the assistant chief of staff of the Air Force. I've had enough of it. If you don't like it, you have somebody call me and go talk bad about Gump. Because one of the main reasons I retired was the pressure to not make people tell the truth. And I didn't have that issue when I was there, Jim. And when you were the wing commander, you were ecstatic when I was there. I showed up at every demo. We didn't have accidents. We met standards. So where are those standards now that you wear those 3 stars? I hope Tony Barfine, your replacement, can see this. And look, I don't care what rank you are. You need to go down there and straighten this mess out. People lied in an investigation. People have broke the rules, and people have practiced unethical hiring practices. Why would you have a board with nobody qualified and no PDs, no records, and the people selecting it weren't even supposed to be down there? The UMD didn't even authorize the people that Col Freel put in charge. He was trying to do a culture change from day one. And in fact, the whole time he was there, he never let a civilian lead that section, even though the UMD said it was there. He said he didn't trust them. You didn't have toxic follower. You didn't have a toxic situation or a culture change. You had a single toxic leader who was out there to lay to waste for Lutz and other people that he just thought they were right and they were wrong. And the wrong people, you removed a man as supervisor who didn't need to be and put a man that he had to have in counseling in charge of it. WTF in Pavlo. Go fix it, Jim. I don't care what rank you are. You're in charge of it and it's time to do something about it. I'm Gump, and that's why this general's in charge. It's time. You don't have too much rank to be punished. It's okay. If you need to remove a colonel and punish them for lying and wasting years and years, I lived under that stress for years at work, but I don't anymore, Jim. You said it concerned you. It concerned you enough that you didn't do a damn thing in your text. And that's the way it was with Gump. Pavlo, Gunship, AFSOC, God bless all you real operators out there holding the standard. We held the standard for years without the politics going on in America. And and I hope you guys stay loyal to the Constitution. I've deployed as much as this dude and been everywhere just about he's been. So I got no problem telling you that you're treating people wrong. And that's the way it was on 26 May, right before Memorial Day. I hope you'll fix this, Jim, and I don't have to keep making these. Gump's out. Talk to you later. Y'all keep them straight now. You hear?